What's up, guys? It is August 31st, 2018. It's time for this week's Q&A. So open Q&A again, I posted on Instagram and Facebook. Might have to stop doing that because the questions come up way too quick, and I really hate to have to cut anyone off that asks questions, but I try to keep these videos to, 20-ish minutes. So anyhow, some really good questions on here. So looking forward to this one. All right. First one on Instagram. Best bang for your buck in contest prep, Anavar or Winstrol. Really whatever's tolerated best. I mean, that's really the answer in terms of cosmetic effect. I mean, it's not going to be drastically different. Just whatever you feel best, using. So yeah, that's really it on that. How would one utilize Ketotifen on a longer clen cycle? Also, is it okay to split T3 clen dosages time together 2 times a day, fasted in afternoon? Okay, so first question, Ketotifen. It's not necessary. The beta receptor downregulation that you hear about is not true. That is a myth. It does not really happen like that. I have seen some literature that might suggest that it could happen in terms of clen treating asthma, but it doesn't happen with the fat loss effects. So I don't know how true the first part is, but no, you don't need it. So don't worry about it. Splitting, well, for one, clen's active life is extremely long, so you don't really need to split it. There is no reason to split it. I would say just do it all in the morning. Maybe it's tapering off by night. You might be able to sleep a little bit better versus doing it at night, where it could impact sleep. But T3 can be split. I've heard conflicting information on that in terms of whether it should be split or not. And this is coming from professionals, in endocrinology and people that work with hormone replacement. I don't think it has to be split, to be completely honest. I mean, I've seen enough anecdotes to say that it doesn't, but you certainly could. So timing, I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't really matter if you take it with food. There are certain minerals that I wouldn't take it with, like heavy iron containing meals. And you can do a little research on that. And it normally says on the bottle too, which minerals to avoid taking it with. But it could be split, doesn't necessarily have to. So convenience thing really. Next one. All right. That's a couple questions. So if a client comes to you with extreme cases of stress, depression, what do you do to help them? Obviously, things like CBD oil, KSM 66, D9, better stress control, etc. Anything else like lithium, perhaps? Yeah, I mean, lithium orotate. So that's, for those of you who don't know, lithium orotate is just a mineral version. So you can get it over the counter. It's not the carbonate version that would be prescribed for mood disorders. The carbonate form does build up in your system. That's why it can have some nasty side effects. And the orotate version doesn't really work in that way. So it doesn't have to be used all the time. It's not something that accumulates. So it can be used sporadically, or it could be used, it could be used daily as well. So yeah, that's a good option. If someone has instability in mood, a lot of ups and downs, like manic depressive type of moods. If they're just depressive, yeah, it could still help. It can still help. I mean, people can be lithium deficient that are depressive. Normally it's more like the manic depressive, but it's probably not going to hurt to try, especially the elemental version of that. Start with like a low 5 milligram dose, and give it a go. Obviously, you're also going to want to look at blood work and labs, as much lab work as you can. If you can get into something like a Dutch test or the one from Life Extension, that's good to see some neurotransmitters, see cyclical adrenal function hormones and things of that nature, that is a good thing to see, just because, yeah, I mean, you can throw a lot of these stress control, supplements at it and try to balance neurotransmitters, but you really don't know exactly what's going on. Maybe they're hormone deficient. Maybe they have low testosterone. Maybe they have estrogen dominance. Maybe they have progesterone, or some metabolites are off, or they're hypothyroid, or they have adrenal insufficiency, or hyperadrenal function. I mean, all of these things could definitely affect the way they feel, and you're just kind of band-aiding something that's underlying, and you don't really know what it is. So, I guess my point is try to figure out like what's causing the stress. Is it just purely psychological? Do they just not react good to situations? And even people that don't react good, I mean, you can retrain the brain. Obviously, things like I've talked about ant therapy, the automatic negative thoughts, trying to get out of that mindset and react differently to situations. Stop, think, then react, that type of thing. But even then, like people that have really, really, really poor stress response, there's normally a reason. Like I know when I had adrenal insufficiency, like my stress response was shit. I knew my adrenals were tanked. Like, so I could think, okay, don't freak out. But like my automatic instinct was like, man, I could not handle shit for stress because I couldn't properly release the stress hormones. I didn't have the proper stress response that I needed to control those situations like a normal person. The only reason I could control it halfway decent was because I was aware of what was happening. But for other people, I mean, they're not going to be that in tune and really know that that's going on. So looking at something like that would be good. I know the test is like, $400 or $300, but it's totally worth it to get like a one shot and get it done type of thing. And then doing the brain training on top of it. And obviously these people they just need to get in tune. They need to take responsibility for their actions too, and not just fall victim to the way they feel. I know a lot of people, just from a psych standpoint, not talking about hormones or anything. One of the biggest things I learned, studying psychology and with myself too, is really just owning up to the way you feel and not wanting to feel like that anymore. So not being like, this sucks, and to be like, no, I want to feel better. You have to want to feel better. And I know it sounds silly, like people who wants to feel bad, but people say they don't, but they don't take any initiative to retrain their brain and retrain the way they react to situations and constant positive reinforcement. It's just like a habit. You form these bad habits, the way you react to situations, the way that you think, the things that you do, all of that stuff is habit forming. So you have to retrain these habits to react to these situations better. That's a huge part of the psychological portion, not really the hormonal portion or anything like that, but they have to do those things, and you might have to give them a little bit of tough love to let them know, hey, this is what you need to do. You have to own up to it. And a lot of the time, if they're aware that it's going on and they're cognizant of their actions, then they're pretty receptive to that kind of advice. Sometimes they're a little resistant, like, oh no, it's just, something wrong with me. It's not me, it's my body or whatever, that bullshit. And they're not going to want to get better, but you can kind of, you have to retrain in that way. So next one, sorry, I'm focusing in and out too. I think it's because of the light in the background. I'm not going to stop the video now though. We'll just have to deal with it. Oops. So, someone with Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, how do you go about treating them if a person doesn't want to take medication? Obviously, two very different issues. Would you say lay off training and excess stress and cortisol can affect it? Okay, so first off, Hashimoto's and Graves, these are autoimmune thyroid disorders. Graves is going to be characterized by hyperthyroid's overactive, and Hashimoto's would be the opposite. It would be hypo. Being an autoimmune issue, if you look in medical literature, a lot of it's going to tell you that they don't actually know the technical cause of these issues. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of little contributing factors, but Don't know the exact cause, or if there really is an exact cause. I think there's multiple things that go into it. Like I said, I would do some research on like autoimmune diets and food selection and things like that. Really trying to mainly lower inflammation. Try to get systemic inflammation in the body as low as possible. Obviously, if they're weight training, they're going to have some short-term inflammation from weight training sessions. That's not really a big deal. It's kind of localized to the tissue, if they're weight training. But with systemic, so any supplements and stuff that help with inflammation, and person asking, what these are. And then stepping it up with like systematic enzymes can help with that. In your curcumin and all that jazz. So all of those things help in lowering inflammatory food choices. So things like in autoimmune paleo type diets, I'm not big on like naming diets, but I mean, the philosophy is good if you just research it and look at the food selection stuff and kind of adopt that. Anything doesn't necessarily mean that they have an allergy, like if they eat something that they're going to break out in hives, but it's still inflammatory food. So limiting things like dairy and gluten and all that stuff that might be inherently a little bit more inflammatory, all that stuff will help. Having proper fatty acid profiles in the diets, so not like tons of grain-fed fatty meats, getting your grass-fed meats, getting your more monos in terms of fats, less polys, all that stuff. So I mean, lowering inflammation through food selection is an excellent way to do it. Obviously, anything else that causes inflammation, like stress, absolutely. Training is okay, but overtraining would be bad because it is going to contribute to the issue more potentially. So, not overtraining, controlling stress, controlling just autonomic nervous system. So, not too much sympathetic drive. Making sure the parasympathetic is being activated properly, so you could do things like flotation therapy, cryotherapy, all that stuff. I mean, I know not everyone's going to have the income and access to all these things, but they can do free stuff like soft belly breathing and meditation, and all the food selection stuff is obviously they're going to buy food anyhow, so they can do it. And you can have them research. There's a ton of information on autoimmune diets out there, and I would do a lot of that stuff, and it would probably drastically improve the situation. Also making sure that they're getting the raw essential nutrients for conversion of T4 to T3 and combating reverse T3. And I made posts about those too. If anyone needs them, they're on my page somewhere. Oops. And you can find that stuff too. So with your conversion, plenty of iodine, selenium, you need those two together. A couple other minerals like zinc and magnesium that are also important. You can find all those there's actually, I'm trying to think, I think it was Life Extension had a really good article on that. You probably go right to their page and search essential thyroid nutrients or something like that, and that will pop up. So making sure they get those in their diets. And it could just be through like a high quality multivitamin, like a Life Extension one that has all the bioavailable forms in it. Or you could supplement with them separately. That's what I'm trying to say. So a lot of stuff you can do there. Now, will you necessarily be able to completely fix the issue with those things? It's hard to say, but some people are going to need medication. I don't think people, it's not my business. I would try to encourage people not to be completely resistant to medication if they've done all those things and they're still hypothyroid, for example, like with Hashis, which is probably a little more common than Graves, I'd say. I'm not sure of the statistics, but if you need a combination therapy like an Armor thyroid or something, or just T3 or just T4 or whatever you need, wouldn't be completely resistant to. I mean, if it's going to make you feel a hell of a lot better and make your body healthier, yeah, you have to take a pill, but whatever. I mean, it's really no side effects to take a pill that is just simply going to balance your hormones. You're much worse off not taking it So the bad stigma behind the medication is really like a moot point there. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, that's my take on that. In a nutshell, okay, that was a mouthful. Another good one. The 28-day saliva test for women. Have you had any clients use this? Did this provide valuable information? My doc is ordering this for me, and I'm hoping it'll be the last straw before doing anything corrective. Blood test showed that my sex and thyroid hormones crashed about a year ago. I've been following my doc's SEP protocol since, and I still no physical change or menstrual cycle, despite exercise, cardio, and diet changes. Okay, so off the top of my head, I don't think I've had anyone do a saliva 28-day, but I have had people do, and I've had doctors that have ordered the Dutch cycle mapping test, and I think that there's 9 samples collected in the test, I think. Could be wrong. I think it's 9. But anyhow, you're testing through the different phases, like through the luteal phase and through menstruation and all these. Well, you're not menstruating, obviously, because there is no cycle, or there is no proper menstrual cycle. But you get my point. They're testing through all of the phases of the menstrual cycle, or the phases that are supposed to be there, and seeing how the cyclically how the hormones are working throughout that. And that's what that whole thing shows when you collect the different samples. So I've seen that, and I've got to assume that's pretty much exactly the same or pretty similar. I'm not sure what else tested on the saliva, but I mean, saliva is just the method that you're collecting. You could collect the same through the dried urine, which is what the Dutch uses. So, I mean, can't really see that there's a ton of difference, and maybe accuracy is a little different. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's totally valuable information, because you're going to see, okay, so why am I not starting my cycle? Am I estrogen dominant? Am I lacking progesterone when I need it to start ovulating? I mean, what's going on? I think that it's really great that your doctor's even ordering this. Most doctors wouldn't touch it or even know anything about cycle mapping enough to order a test like that. So that's cool. I would definitely not be resistant to it. Yeah, it's kind of a pain in the ass to do it, but I would definitely go forward with it. I don't know what all tests they've done. Like, I know I just talked about autoimmune thyroid issues. Probably don't have those, I'm guessing, if your thyroid or if your hormones crash because of like a contest prep or something, which I think is the case here for this person. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, be thorough, check in reverse T3 and seeing like how your thyroid's converting, all that. Probably seen all that stuff already, I'm assuming. But yeah, the cycle mapping is a great idea, because really, if you have to do anything corrective, like some people, for example, a good example is I use PCOS as a pretty easy example. A lot of women will lack progesterone when they need it to start ovulating. So what do? Instead of just taking progesterone all the time, if they can do cycle mapping and know what's going on, they can just take progesterone for 7 days before their period's supposed to start. And I've seen a lot of girls not even have to use an oral, like, higher dose. They can just use a cream, and that stuff's over the counter. I think Now Foods even makes one, and they just put the cream on, a few pumps or whatever they need, and boom, good to go. So, and then they ovulate normally, and they just do that each month. So, yeah, I mean, if your doctor's willing to order and go through that, I would absolutely suggest doing it. And if you do get it done, you want to ask any follow-up questions after it's done, that'd be great. I'd like to might be cool to add those questions to another Q&A. It's a good subject to talk about. Okay. Any client experience with DHB? So DHB is one test SIP, and I guess is what you mean. You could call it either, I suppose. Yes. Maybe 3 that I can think of. Kind of mixed anecdotes on it, and from everything I've read, most of the other stuff's just mean, I've read like literature on actually what it is, like from what the molecules are and stuff, but from like an actual anecdote standpoint, it's kind of mixed. I think it's one of those things, where you see kind of an exotic compound like that and you get a few people online that really hype it up and they're like, and they get results from it and they think it's the greatest thing ever when really they've never used enough other stuff in other doses to really know. Kind of like Trestolone or something like that, where it could definitely has its place, but it might get overhyped. And I think that that's what you get in some of the anecdotes. But anyhow, it's at least from what I noticed, it was kind of like a weak Trenbolone, I guess, what you could say, or maybe like a stronger version of Primo. And I've actually seen other people mention it in that regard. So that seems to be kind of the conclusion. So whether that's like a cost-effective way to do anything, or you might as well just use Trenbolone. If you react good to it, probably going to do it. Be worth just doing that, because if it is similar and it's more mild, less side effects, well, yeah, it's more mild, so of course you get less side effects. Well, you could just use a lower dose of Trenbolone and probably get the same thing with less side effects. So whether it has like any unique effects that are absolutely 100% unique to it as a compound, I didn't see any, so it's hard to say. Now it could be something that maybe like in a cruise situation where someone's just on a normal physiological dose of testosterone and they add it in by itself singularly to kind of see what it does on its own. That could be maybe a potential way to use it and see what happens, and then compare it to something else. And obviously, like in a lot of these situations and the ones that I saw too, there was other variables in play and other compounds. So I mean, it's just hard to say. Did it get overshadowed by something else? Probably. So that's not, it might not be 100% useful anecdote in that regard, but that's really all I have to say on it. Like I said, it could be cool to something to try out like on its own, 100% entirely on its own, and see what the effects are, see if there's anything actually unique about it. Yep. So any favorite tunes to help you fall asleep or sounds when having a hard time shutting brain off? Fan. Just use the fan. It's funny because I have the fan going, but I also wear earplugs. Actually, I've gotten used to complete silence. I like absolute complete silence. Even though I was somebody that had a hard time shutting my brain off, I thought earplugs would just drive me nuts because I would be in my own head. I love them now. I don't want any sound. I want to be completely silent, completely dark. And I fall asleep really quick. Seems odd. Took me a few nights to get used to it, but I would really prefer it no other way now. So maybe give that a shot. Obviously set up your room in the right environment. Try not to have any distractions, too many lights, all that good stuff. And even just things like soft belly breathing before bed, get some PNS activation, and make sure that you're not overly stimulated from something. You didn't watch like a super duper action flick before you go to bed and expect to not have some adrenaline release. So, things like that, obviously. I know I cut this thread off a bunch of times, but go ahead and do it. Go ahead and answer. Okay, well, we're running on 24 minutes. All right. Understand the whole Tren cough, and some individuals make it sound like it's not a big deal, but my experience that the cough is scary. I literally can't breathe and feel like I'm going to pass out. What are other people experiencing with Tren cough in regards to intensity? That sounds pretty intense. I mean, I've read about it. So yeah, everyone gets it differently. Is there like actually, there's a lot of different theories in terms like from a pulmonary standpoint, like what's actually happening. None of which are necessarily dangerous, maybe scary, but not dangerous. So, take that for what it's worth. Really have a lot to say about it. Not really asking like how to combat it. I mean, I did see this was actually posted by a doctor, and this was ages ago, but there was a lot of people talking about it and this was on a forum, and I can't remember where it was, of people that get the extreme pulmonary side effect like that to do it subcutaneously. Probably, I would assume probably because it absorbs at a different rate, that makes it probably slower, I would guess. Doesn't hit the bloodstream as fast. So try that. That could be a way to eliminate that. Okay, one more on this. Doing diet based on calorie number instead of macro number. Well, I mean, kind of the hierarchy of needs there. You could, that's, I mean, if your macros are set, then your calories are set. So calorically, you know, you're going to be wherever your macros decide you're at, or vice versa. So just looking at calories, I mean, obviously you're not going to get the same benefit as looking at macros. I mean, individual macros will have different effects, whether it's metabolically to some extent, like with thermic effect of protein, with hormonally what different macros do in terms of insulin sensitivity. Yeah, I mean, they're not all going to act exactly the same. We know that calorie isn't necessarily just a calorie. Yeah, for someone that's super overweight, if they want to just do a calorie-based diet, yeah, it's gonna work. In a situation of getting really lean or maximizing nutrient partitioning in a hypertrophy standpoint or something, I wouldn't do it. I mean, you're not going to get the top result that you could expect from using a certain macro split. So that's kind of my answer to that. Couple more here. What does the Body by Batman hashtag come from? Where? Yeah, so I hashtag that on Instagram a lot. One of my clients made that up, actually. I didn't make it up, but I just used it. It was because I've kind of had a lot of inquiries from people in terms of people coming to me with certain specific health issues, and that just kind of became a mixed or fix it type of thing. So that's where that came from. Are you crawling on the floor? You don't have to. You could come up. You can be in the video. It's okay. So yeah, it was like me saving people. Like they just picked Batman, saving people from themselves. So it was like, that's where the superhero name came from, I guess. And it stuck. You're welcome. Did you make that up? Mm-hmm. I thought somebody else did. Mm-hmm. Oh, so maybe Jerica made it up.
No, Kate did.
Kate Powell. Mm-hmm. What's Kate Powell? Mm-hmm. I don't know if she still watches my videos, but yeah. Hi, Kate. Yeah, so that's where that came from. It seemed appropriate, and I get tons of health-related questions and lots of scenarios that people can't seem to fix. You taking off?
Yep.
Okay. So, yep, that's what it is. Okay. I've had many sleepless nights pondering this. Also, do you notice much as far as energy and cognitive benefits from supplementing with lion's mane? Okay, so kind of my thing with any of the adaptogenic herbs or any of the nootropics and things like that is you're going to notice more when you're in a compromised state. So whether that's you're overly stressed or overly tired or have a higher cognitive demand, like you have studying or work or something along those lines, you're going to notice more from these things because you need them. Someone that's not doing anything or doesn't have any kind of demand, isn't depressed, isn't stressed, isn't any of these things, probably not going to get a lot of benefit. They're not going to notice anything. So it's kind of like using CBD oil for anxiety when you don't have anxiety, So yeah, I like lion's mane in those situations where people are trying to maybe wean off stimulants, or people are more stressed, or they have maybe some brain fog from just lack of glucose in the diet. It's going to shine a lot more in those types of situations for sure. You want to look for a product that has the fruiting buds or fruiting bodies. I'm sorry, not fruiting buds. fruiting bodies instead of the grain form, you can look on My Nutrition. The mynutrition.com in the US store talked about that. I think somebody actually mentioned that. Use Mind. Yep. Yeah. So that's one of the sponsors of the OPD podcast that I do with Joe. So you can definitely use them. High quality HPLC tested products. So check them out. But yeah, and the person asking this, deep in prep, you would for sure be someone that would get a cognitive benefit from using it at this point. Absolutely. And then maybe like in the weeks following prep as well, and see how you like it. That'd be a good way to test it out for sure. Okay. What's the difference between 5 billion probiotic and 50 billion? I would think more is better, but clearly not the case. Somebody says, I reckon about 45 billion. Yeah, okay, that would be the difference. So the billion is culture forming units. So when you see that CFU, that is culture forming units on a probiotic. You'll see doses all over the place. You've seen some that 5 billion seems as potent as 50. I think really a lot of it comes down to delivery system and just how many live bacteria are actually left in the product when it gets to your stomach. Whether that's because it's destroyed by acidity in the GI, or it sits on a hot shelf and it doesn't have a good encapsulation system, or whatever. But I've noticed, like, for example, I've suggested like Garden of Life brand before. Their 5 billion is pretty strong compared to like 50 billion with other products. And I just think it probably comes down to they have a more shelf stable product that is more resistant to acidity. So I'm not saying that's like the only product, but that's really why, that's probably the main reasons that people notice the biggest difference. And then obviously there's like countless strands of probiotics, countless. If you're just using a multi-strand, something that has several in there just as like a maintenance dose, you might notice it might notice something from that. But if it's if somebody's using like a specific strand for some kind of immune issue, or some kind of like SIBO issue or something, it's the strands make a big difference too. So that's also going to matter. If you're taking something you don't need, you're probably not going to notice it, kind of like the CBD reference that I made. So that's my take on that, and that is it. Holy shit, 33 minutes. Longest Q&A in a while. All right, guys, I'm going to cut it there, and we'll talk to you guys next week.